how could this all get started? You saw it in the video just a few minutes ago, those of you who were here, how they had to have these, they talked about this amino acid tRNA transferase molecules. Maybe you don't remember them from the video, but they had them there. And you have to have 20 of these different kinds before the system starts working. Otherwise, you're not going to synthesize proteins, or if you do synthesize them, they're not going to have the amino acids you need, type of thing. So it's this kind of thing that you sit and ask yourself, can the scientific community reject God in the light of such data? And all this is peanuts relative to getting a whole cell, folks. And here's just a picture of a cell, different parts. A ribosome is one of these little dots like you have right around here, type of thing, and so on. Centrioles that direct cell division, and so on. All kinds of other parts you have to have. You can have all the parts you want for life on the earth. Unless you have them in the cell, you're not going to have life as we know it. And you've got to have these things at the same time in the same place to get this started. You can have parts of a car spread over the surface of the earth. And, a cylinder in Germany and a crankcase in South America and so on. How's the car ever going to come together unless you get them together in the same place? So this is where we are on this issue. It's not just a question of inventing these parts somewhere, sometime on the earth. You've got to get them in the same place in order to get life to start by itself. Well, moving on there, Harold Morowitz, who believes in evolution, energy-flowing biology, and so on. Smallest independent organism known, mycoplasma, the one I mentioned to you. Size and so on. What's the probability that would form by chance? Using thermodynamics, calculations based on thermodynamics, energy relationship of molecules. He said 1 chance out of 1 followed by 5 billion zeros. Okay. But he still thinks, probably, and he has to follow the scientific community, just scientific community. If you want to be a scientist, you've got to leave God out of the picture. Try and figure it out somewhere or other, type of thing. But if you're looking for truth, you ought to be open. You ought to, hey, this is not working. This kind of stuff is not working. It's not just the forces of physics I mentioned, it's origin of life, and so on, and reproduction. One of the characteristics of living things is they can reproduce. And boy, do they. The sign on a farm once said, "Free cute kittens." About a month later, there was a sign on there that said, "Free kittens." And a month later, it said, "Free cats." And about 2 months later, it said, "Free cute kittens and cats." Things really reproduce. I had 4 skunks in my yard this last year, and I hope they don't reproduce too much. I understand if you pick a skunk by the tail, he can't spray you. I haven't tried it yet, but I just thought I'd mention it. Anyway, reproduction, very complex thing. How could that happen? You can get all these parts of the cell, so you get a living cell. One living cell is not going to start life on Earth. It's going to run into adverse conditions, probably die, and so on. That's not the way it starts. You got to have some thing that can reproduce, and you got to reproduce all those parts I showed you about. Process of meiosis, very simple explanation how you get the DNA split off here into chromosomes, and they poles to the various poles and so on, so that this cell ends up with a full complement of DNA, as that one has, so on, and the picture is so much more complicated than illustrated. All the necessary parts of the cell have to be distributed to these two new cells, type of thing. This is part of the problem of reproduction. Well, you may not have heard about Anthony Flew. Anthony Flew is probably the most respected scholarly atheist that there was. He's written 24 books on philosophy, and on December 9, 2004, the Associated Press broke the news that legendary atheist Anthony Flew had changed his mind and decided that there must be a God. This was a shocking thing to the intellectual community of the world. Here's their leader, their icon, and he said, hey, no, there's got to be a God. Now, Anthony Flew did not join a church. He's not sure whether he believes in Christ per se or not, but the scientific data told him, hey, there's got to be a God. He said, well, I had to go where the evidence leads. And evidence was forces of physics, I mentioned to you. The DNA, he talks about the DNA. And he interestingly mentions, he said, and reproduction, which Dawkins and Darwin ignore. This is a tremendous phenomenon that Darwin doesn't talk about per se how it started. Dawkins doesn't talk about how it started. But it's data that convinced Anthony Flew, hey, there's got to be a God here. Even though I have been saying for decades and decades, I hadn't been, of course, some scientists said, well, Anthony Flew's getting senile type of thing and so on. And the video is coming. He's put out a video, folks, on so on. This man is convinced, hey, there's got to be some kind of God type of thing based on the scientific data. Well, origin of life. I just mentioned a few things. I just thought I'd summarize here. All these are things I discussed in the book. Where was the soup? They don't know. They can't find the evidence for it. They think the whole ocean was a soup where amino acids were and things like that. Selection of the right kind of molecules. That involves all kinds of things. The right kind of amino acids and their optical isomers and all that stuff. Organic molecules would not survive. These are delicate molecules. You got to get them all in the same place at the same time, as I mentioned to you. Optical isomers, some molecules, sugars and amino acids and so on, like your right and left hand. And all living things have only left, I shouldn't say almost all, only have left-handed isomers, which, because of the way they turn light, we can't do anything going into the details. Sugars go the other way, and so on. But the genetic code I mentioned, formation of large molecules. I mean, how do you produce these big protein and DNA things, especially DNA? Biochemical pathways never control. Man, you got to have control of those things, or your cell is in deep trouble.